Courses on the Everlearner are laid out in chapters. Here's chapter 1, 2, 3 and 4 here. Chapter 4 is broken into 2 topics. Here's topic 2 of chapter 4. That's got a lesson in here and it's on levers. We can go in and we can start taking this lesson. Okay, so we're a student here. The lesson is teaching the student the core components built in front of them, clearly taught with illustrations, drawings, applications, exam answer examples and very, very clear guidance. Finally, on the tutorials, you'll notice these grey blocks down here and that Fleur has watched 16% of a tutorial. If we click the tutorial to here and start playing, you'll see that tracking builds up under this green bar here. We'll get a grey build up of watching. This is the milliseconds that in this case Fleur Delacour is studying. Okay, if the student tries to drag to the end, and they get picked up for tracking at that particular point. Okay, so they cannot cheat this tracking. Finally, on the tutorial space, the student can also make notes. You can see that Fleur's made a bunch of notes previously. Perhaps I'm at this point of the tutorial right here, and it's teaching me here the fulcrum is the ball of the foot for a class to lever. Okay, notice where my video play head is. Bang, that note goes in there. Students make key linguistic notes onto the tutorial itself. Once the student has watched their tutorial, they've made their notes, we encourage them to take what we refer to as practice mode, low stakes practice quizzing. The student goes in, they get a series of questions. Here, I have my notes available. I have no time limit. I answer the question, I get feedback. I go forward. This one, I'm checking the image, I'm dragging things into place. If I'm right or if I'm wrong, I get feedback as to why I'm right or wrong. This one, I'll deliberately get wrong. Here is the feedback. Now, it's important to stress that if Fleur wants to, she can revisit notes at any time. It will open up a new tab and it'll take her back to the moment of that note. It's a really important aspect of this. But this is practice mode. This is non-transparent to the teacher and just for the student. Whenever the student is ready, they can switch to test mode. In test mode, we have a different environment now. I'm now time restricted per question. This time, I have no notes available. This time, I'm guessing these answers getting them wrong. Notice my time stops in test mode. This one I'm going to claim here. No notes available, time restriction per question. I'm dragging things into place and so on and so on. Every single submission gets feedback, in this case, incorrect answer feedback. Finally, on our courses, students have what we call checkpoints. Notice these big yellow blobs. I'm going to do checkpoint 4. When I go in, I'm told I'm going to get 30 questions, 22.5 minutes, and I know that I'm going to be questioned on all of this blood and heart stuff here. So when I go in to my checkpoint, notice what I get. I get a question, but importantly, my timer is counting down per test. And in this case, which vessel is an artery? I believe it's vessel B. I choose vessel B. Now notice no feedback. For this one, I'm going to choose these 2 options. For this one, I'm going to say feature A is the aorta, and so on and so on. I'm going to just choose a few answers. I'm not really reading, as you can tell. But once I've done all 30 of my questions, I submit my checkpoint. It doesn't want me to, so I haven't finished. I get my score, I get my time, but importantly now, I can review my feedback. Question by question by question. Checkpoints are end of unit summary test. Now let's see how teachers perform on the website. One of the core behaviours of a teacher is to set work, or what we call assignments, for our students. You see here, I've got some examples already, but we're going to create an assignment. Here's my options. I want them to watch, I want them to write, I want them to answer a quiz that I select. I want them to answer an end of unit test. But I'm going to set an assignment for watch lessons. I'm going to choose GCSE and I'm going to choose IGCSE 9 to 1. I'm going to say, this is of course the UK version. I'm going to say I want the students doing this lesson and this lesson. I want them doing it between now and I want it done for Friday next week. Okay, and I'm going to say watch task. Okay, rubbish title, but you get the idea. What I'm going to do finally is I'm going to give them some instructions. You see here, I've got some standard instructions I give my students. This one goes in here. I tell them what I want them to do. And finally, I make it mandatory. And I'm going to assign this to just Harry, Hermione, and let's put Fleur into this task. You know, just these 3. Perhaps they're behind, perhaps they're going ahead, perhaps they missed a lesson. There we go. That assignment is set. And we're now tracking the activity of these students as they engage with this task. Let's have a look at how Fleur receives that task. She goes to notifications. At the very top, she's been assigned. She goes in. Here's the instruction that she has. She starts learning. You'll notice here that I'm due to watch this tutorial, which I'll start in the background. But notice how everything else here is locked. Okay, so in assignment mode, only those 2 tutorials are open, and of course it's tracking how the student's performing. They're making notes here as well, of course, but if the student goes back to that assignment, you see now they're being tracked with that information. Of course, it's returning that data to my teacher too. And just to conclude that point, let's have a look what the teacher sees now. The teacher has this assignment, a watch task. They go in, and of course now we have the data coming in from Fleur, the 2% on the first video, while Hermione and Harry have not yet started that task. Let's do a different assignment. This time I want to create an answering task. I'm going to choose test yourself this time. Let's imagine I'm working with a GCSE group. Let's imagine they're doing EdXL for argument's sake. Let's imagine here that we've just taught them muscle fiber types, but you know what? I want to mix these questions with pairs, locations, and types of muscles, and I also want to include classification of joints, and I want to include classification and structure of the skeleton. Okay, so there's my curriculum. I'm going to set a passing standard, nice and high in this context, to 80%. I'm going to set them 15 questions, and I'm going to choose when it opens and it closes. I want this done by Monday morning at 9 o'clock, say, for argument's sake. And here I'm simply going to call this a mixed test. But what I'm going to say to my students, let me just bring my notes back here. You can see I've pre-prepared these. I'm simply going to say to my students here, you must score 80%. Repeat until you achieve it. If stuck, use practice mode. I'm going to allow retakes. I'm going to make it mandatory. I could assign it to some students. This time, bang, it's all. One final, and there's their scores in there. Remember, if Alan Bloggs or Hermione tries this test 4 or 5 different times to get to 80%, it will be different every single time. They can't simply remember the quiz. Last example on assignments I'm going to give you. We've got loads of options in assignments, but the last one is I'm going to set a big yellow blob checkpoint test, and I'm going to set it in the future to open up when I want it. This time I'm going to go for, let's say it's AQA GCSE, could obviously be any course, but I'm going to choose this checkpoint 2 here, all about this muscle stuff. Okay, I'm going to set no passing standard, but importantly, I'm going to set this task to begin on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, because that's when my lesson is, and it's going to close at 10 o'clock. And I'm simply going to call this an in-class checkpoint 2 test, and again, nice and simple. I'll copy my text in for speed. There we go. Checkpoint test, no passing standard, gaps in your knowledge, and I recommend having a go at it before the lesson. Okay, I'm going to make it one-off during the lesson, make it mandatory, could be for some, bang, that's for all. It will open on Wednesday at exactly 9 a.m. Assignments are how you cause your students to learn in a structured framework on theeverlearner.com. And finally, on the dashboard, we want to know how our students are performing. So what do we provide? For our courses, we provide students in rows, content in columns. I can select maybe one student, maybe 2. I can select maybe just one single lesson. What do we have here? I'll make it a touch bigger. We have tutorial completion for both students. We have time in practice mode for both students. We have live test score for both students. We've got a problem here with Draco, and we got time in test for both Draco and Harry. So we get this objectively produced live volatile diagnostic data for every single student. Let's bring in every student for this one lesson. For whatever reason, let's compare the first lesson of the course with the last lesson of the course. Why? I don't know, but let's do it. And let's bring everything back in. Let's click onto checkpoints. These are our end of unit yellow blob tests. Let's isolate Hermione. Let's look at checkpoint 1. She's attempted it 3 times. I want to review attempt 3. She took 17.5 minutes, did all 30 questions, but importantly now, I can review answer by answer by answer of how she performed. Let's bring everyone back in. And finally, guys, probably my favorite page on the whole website, assignment markbook. Every time you create an assignment, your students' data comes flowing into this pre-populated automated markbook. So let's have a look. My students are not real, they tend not to do their homework, but let's have a look at Draco. Here's his homework record automatically produced for the entire period of the course. I don't have to lift a finger. Let's compare that to Harry, for example. Here's how they both perform. Harry's a naughty boy. So here we go. We get this data coming through and flowing through. That, guys, is theeverlearner.com. That's what we do. We are completely free until September. You should join us.